Okay, excellent. Do this. I'm going to go slideshow. All right, so off I go. All right, well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is the 2022 Winter Maintenance Forum. It's our second Winter Maintenance Forum. We had the first one about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. It's brought to you today by Anchorage Metropolitan Area Transportation Solutions, otherwise known as AMATS. We are the Transportation Planning Department for the municipality of Anchorage. My name is Joni Wilm. I am Senior Transportation Planner with the municipality. I work in AMATS, and I am also the AMATS Non-Motorized Coordinator. Excuse me. And I'm also the project manager for the AMATS Non-Motorized Plan. Some reasons I want to share with you today as to why we're doing this forum. Primarily, we want to have an information sharing session where we can all kind of discuss some current challenges and opportunities with winter maintenance. Specifically for AMATS, we want to share with you data that we collected during our non-motorized planning effort. And the main reason that I want to share this data with you is I have created a priority map for what we consider to be the priority network for pedestrians that we think need to be focused on for future to improve conditions for our people that need to get around by foot or by bike that don't have access to a vehicle. And so that'll be the data that I'm showing you that leads to a potential priority map that we'll go to at the end. So, and once again, we appreciate everyone joining us today. This is going to be great. Just before we get started, some general information. As I mentioned, there is a link in the chat box where you can sign in. So please click on that and sign in. Also, just to let you know, we are recording this, which I forgot to press.
I recorded.
Okay, you did, Christine. Thank you so much. I forgot to do that, so my apologies. But we are recording this forum, and we will be posting the live recording after we conclude so that folks who missed it can watch it on our website afterwards. So just FYI, everything's being recorded, just so that you know. We also are going to be insisting on a code of conduct for today's meeting. We want to ensure that this is a safe space for information sharing. That's the purpose of us getting together today. So please don't be disruptive or disrespectful. We will, if you are interrupting or being disrespectful, we will mute you and remove you from the chat. So just to FYI, we're keeping an eye on that. So please, we appreciate your respectful attendance. If you have questions or comments, feel free to enter them in the chat box and we'll monitor those, and we will get to all of those at the end of our presentations. I want to make sure we get through all of our presentations since we do have a pretty full agenda today, and then we will be reserving time at the end to answer questions. And then lastly, please mute your microphone. It helps us get a recording without any feedback, so a nice recording. And if you're on your phone, *6 will mute your phone or unmute you, just FYI. So again, here's our agenda for today. Introductions, presentations from the following groups here. Then we'll hopefully have about a half hour for discussion and Q&A, and then some closing remarks and next steps. So I'm just going to jump right into my presentation. Again, I'm Joni Wilm with AMATS. Just want to talk to you today about the non-motorized planning effort that we did. This is our latest non-motorized plan. It was approved in November of 2021 by our policy committee. It represents over 4 years of public engagement and data analysis and planning. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the following data sets, again, leading to hopefully a map that could potentially help with us focusing in on some priority networks for pedestrians in wintertime. So just an overall snapshot of our process. 4 years of work. We began with a big field data collection effort, which was a live app that we asked people to use to go onto the trails and onto the facilities and document their issues. So you can see some of the So you can see some of the maps that we achieved from that on the top right side of the screen here. We also did a big community workshop. We had many advisory group and stakeholder meetings. We did mobile meetings. We did a community walk audit and a couple bicycle tours. We also did a big open house at the end. And then I just wanted to point out to you here at the end of the process, when the plan was completed, we had a public comment period and received almost 1,000 comments. One of the categories for the comments was policy from the document. I just want to point out that the majority of the comments we received in this category were about seasonal maintenance. So here in the blue, this column here represents our seasonal maintenance comments. So another reason why we're doing the forum, we hear about it all the time. It's a big issue for folks in our community, and so we just want to make sure we follow up and see what we can do to improve their experience. So just again, here's the data we collected. We looked at Vision Zero high injury network data, this graph on the left, or this image on the left. We also looked at level of traffic stress for all the facilities. This was basically a measurement of looking at the character of the facility combined with the street width and what the posted speed was to give an estimate of the traffic stress for a pedestrian or a cyclist. So as you can see, higher stress roadways are in red and down to level of stress 1, lower stress is in blue. So you can kind of get an idea of where some of the higher stress roadways were that we assessed. We also looked at demand analysis. The demand analysis was basically a measurement of where facilities were in terms of where people lived, where they worked, played, shopped, had access to transit, and where they went to school. And so you can see here in the map, we've got some darker orange areas, darker red to orange to yellow shows us where we have concentrations of more demand for the facility. In addition, we looked at health and equity data. This is an equity analysis map. It's almost identical to the health map that was created. So we're just showing this one map, but basically these two categories are equal in how they how the maps turned out. Equity looked at age, income, level of English proficiency, percentage of non-white population, educational attainment, and access to a vehicle. Health looked at the prevalence of obesity, heart disease, ability to be physically active, asthma prevalence, diabetes prevalence, cancer prevalence, and then mental health. So these are equity maps showing us again where some of our highest need areas are for our planning area. We also looked at the Land Use 2040 Land Use Plan. Here's a map showing the transit supportive development corridors you can see in the light hash pink areas, as well as the bus routes that are in darker pink. And so those also show us areas where we can focus on to improve facilities where people are walking and biking. So all of that data basically and more, that was some of the data that we took, but all of that data was used to create a priority pedestrian corridor map. So this is in our non-motorized plan. This shows us where our high, medium, and low priority corridors are. These are also just our primary pedestrian corridors. We also had a whole nother level of secondary corridors. So these corridors are the most important corridors, the high, medium, and low, for all of the data that we looked at for improving facilities along those routes. So we looked at, we had criteria also for fleshing these out. Those included connectivity, that looked at our demand analysis and proximity to schools and parks. We looked at the health and equity data. That was a criteria for creating this map. We also included the Vision Zero crash data. And we looked at previous and public support for improvements on the corridor. So that map, then I just used that map to create our priority pedestrian corridors, which I'm presenting to you today. Those are all in the red that you can see here. And then I've overlaid the transit supported development corridors on this map, as well as the bus routes. So, and essentially what we're saying is that these are the most important areas that need to be focused on as far as winter maintenance that we've heard as we did our non-motorized plan. So these are the most important areas for folks to be able to get around. And I think what we were looking at or hoping for is that these facilities could potentially receive some more attention, especially within the first 24 hours after snowfall. And so what I've done, we looked at the municipality of Anchorage maintenance and operations snow plow plan. I believe this is the most recent. This was on the website. And so they have two, and hopefully we can hear more from them today about their snowplow plans, but they have plan A and plan B, and day one alternates. So for here, you can see in the yellow, this would be day one, the first 24 hours, and day two, or day one with the plan B in the pink. So what I've done, just to get an idea of, you know, potentially how we're matching up, I've just overlaid their plan snowplow A day one with our priority pedestrian network that we created, just to see kind of where we're matching up and where maybe we're not matching up. So here's an example of the snowplow A day one overlaid on our priority map, and then the snowplow B day one overlaid on our priority map. And I don't know, you know, we're just putting this data out there. We'd love to hear some feedback. And we know that, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into maintenance. So we just want to extend this out here as some data that we think is helpful, and see what happens and where it goes. And that's about all I have. I thank you again. Again, my name is Joni Wilm, Senior Transportation Planner with AMATS. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to the next presenter, which I believe is Paul Van Landingham with our M&O Maintenance and Operations Department. So let me just stop sharing my screen here. And then we'll hand it off to Paul. Paul, are you on the phone?
Yes, I'm here, but I believe Lance Wilbur is going to speak first.
Okay, excellent. Lance, do you want to share your screen, or?
Nope.
There you go. Nope.
Yeah, go. Well, thanks, Joni, and thank you, Paul. I appreciate you setting this thing up, setting up the forum here. We can about winter maintenance. And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Lance Wilbur. I'm the Director of Public Works. Under the Bronson administration, we've had a little bit of reorganization. So street maintenance is in, obviously, the Maintenance and Operations Department is under Public Works, as is the Traffic Engineering Department and Project Management and Engineering. And my first, not my first winter here at Public Works, but certainly not my first winter in dealing with here in Anchorage. So I really appreciate you setting this thing up. And there is, I think there's some synergies. Frankly, Joni, when I was looking at your overlay map, I was actually getting to the same point where I was looking at our street maintenance plan A and plan B, and then sort of recognizing some other information that's not obvious just in the picture, but the logic between plan A and plan B. And then you just taking the step where I was going to go, which is kind of overlay our plan A and plan B and street maintenance. And then where you've identified some of the places that you guys would really like to see some more focus on as a result of from the work from the planning effort and Vision Zero and a variety of others. So I kind of don't think that we're that far off. I'm going to start off a little bit. You know, when we set up plan A and plan B, you know, generally the philosophy is we start at one end of town and work to the other end of town. And then plan B, we start in one place and work to the other end of town. And the reason that we generally do that is that, you know, if you happen to live in Northeast Anchorage, and we always start in Northeast Anchorage, you're always going to get plowed first. But if you're in Southwest Anchorage, you don't get plowed for, you know, maybe a day or two afterwards. And so we do that sort of in the reverse. But that is generally the plan A and the plan B, a little bit more detail. The other thing is, you know, the focus areas that we look at, we're really in tune with what's going on with public transportation. I know that when Jamie and her crew recently, when they've added bus routes or making changes to their bus routes, we tweak our plowing and our sidewalk maintenance as a result of those changes. Obviously, anything that has to do with elementary school, we're really look into those. But for another sort of a high level look is that, the way in which we plow, the approach that we take to plowing in general is we focus on our collector streets and our arterial streets and the pedestrian facilities that are adjacent to them. And then once that is, we just keep after that until it stops snowing. And then once that part's done, we go into the neighborhoods and we do what was considered a plow out. And, all of what I'm telling and what I'm sharing is available online at the Public Works. They have a maintenance map, not only for the winter, but also for other services that they provide in there. So, I think we're willing to learn and adjust. I just also think that there needs to be some appreciation for the work that we do and our partners over at DOT. I see a couple folks on there. They I think, in my opinion, they do a pretty good job with the resources they have, and I commend them for that. It's not a perfect science. They're by no means. There's always room to make some adjustments. So hopefully at the end of this, I think we can overlay and take a look at what you've put together, Joni. And if we can make some adjustments, we're already there, but we need to make some cleanup. I do, frankly, I'll be honest, I think the ability to hit all of those red lines within 24 hours, if that's the ambitions of the group, that's going to be a pretty steep hill to accommodate, because typically we're still doing the priority transit routes, school routes, main collector streets, and sidewalks as we're moving through within that 24-hour period. So also, as we learn and walk through this process, managing expectations are going to be important. And obviously, there's only the amount that we can do with what we have. And I think we do a pretty good job, but certainly willing to tweak it and helping people get to school, helping people get to work by using non-motorized. So again, thanks, Joni, for putting it together. I appreciate it. So I'll end with that. And if I missed any big pieces, I'll let Paul or Saxton jump in.
Thank you, Lance. Yes, and agreed. And we also feel like maintenance already does a great job, especially with the resources that they're given. So thank you for stating that as well. You have about 10 minutes left. If I don't know if Paul wants to say anything, or we could move on to the next.
Saxton, would you like to speak on anything?
I don't. I'll let Paul. Paul let you speak on some of the good news that's coming up that will help our operation become more efficient and effective. But it's my rookie year as a new director. I was with Transit last year, so I was their project manager for a full year and got to see their operations internally, how we worked with street maintenance. And now being on this side of the fence, it's interesting because I know the correlation. I know some of the relationships and jurisdictions with the state of Alaska and other entities. So I'm getting a better view of things. I really defer to, Lance with his historical knowledge and Paul, but we had a lot of challenges, stuff that I wouldn't anticipate having, and it might be COVID. I don't know what it was, but our labor force, a lot of open PCNs, we couldn't get filled. I think it sounded like a record amount of breakdowns that Paul had experienced in his career. Of our 30 graders, we had 14 down, I believe, or 15 down at one time at one point. And then that worked with our other shop. That was kind of incidental to that consequence of trying to get that iron back out on the road. The ice that we experienced in the late part of winter, early spring was something no one's ever seen before. And that was really hard on the equipment. But it was very interesting to see how we tried to overcome those challenges. It's probably hard to say it didn't exactly help us meet our turnaround time goals, but it was interesting to see others work overtime and try to achieve those goals nonetheless. But Paul, I'll let you wrap it up. But in my rookie year, I don't have much to say, but it was interesting. A lot of challenges.
Thank you, Saxton. So the plow plan A and B is all residential plowing. What I want to let everyone know is the routes that we do on our priority 1 trails and sidewalks are simultaneously done with all of the collectors and arterials. So as Lance said, we would be more than happy to take a look at some things and make some adjustments. But as long as all the parties are in there, we need school district, we need public transit and planning in there. And if we do that, we're more than happy to make some adjustments. But there's only so many hours in the day and so much money and people to get it done. So we're maxed out right now. One good thing is we were just awarded or a grant from AMATS to purchase 14 new sidewalk tractors over the next 3 years. Most of our tractors are 20 plus years old. So once those come in and we start getting that, we should find some efficiencies and speed up that process. But as long as we're realistic in our expectations, me and my staff are more than happy to sit down and discuss adjustments that are needed.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Sounds awesome. Is there anyone else from Municipality of Anchorage Maintenance and Operation that wanted to speak? We've got a couple more minutes.
Jim Belts is superintendent. Jim, you have anything to add?
I'm actually walking along while I'm doing this meeting, so no, I do not.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you all attending and being part of the discussion today. And we really do appreciate the hard work that we know you and your team does. I know it's a lot. This winter was brutal, and just think you're all doing a great job. And just want to help focus in on some things with our data that we have collected. So appreciate you being part of the discussion. And with that, let's go ahead and move on to our next presenter. I believe it's Stephen Refuse with Parks and Recreation. Stephen, are you on the line?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks, Joni. And I'm going to share my screen here. I got a little presentation.
Okay, I'm going to turn mine off.
And I apologize, everyone, my voice. I'm a little bit sick, so I'm just a little hoarse here. But my name's Steve Rafuse. I'm superintendent of parks for the municipality of Anchorage, Parks and Recreation, and really appreciate what Paul's shop does. I think they do a great job clearing the roads, arterials, getting to the neighborhoods, and a lot of what we do tends to help bolster those efforts. So I just want to talk a little bit for about 5 minutes here about what we do throughout the course of the winter. So we've got essentially 3 shops that we operate out of. One down by the AS&G lot down in South Anchorage on Lang Street, one up in Mountain View, which is a north maintenance shop. And then we also operate out of our horticulture yard. And we essentially focus on 3 main maintenance responsibilities in the winter, which is maintaining rinks and lakes for ice skating, grooming trails, and then we do actually a lot of work maintaining sidewalks, bridges, walkways, stairways, and particularly as they focus around different school routes and connections to parks. So just a background about the lakes and rinks that we maintain. So 3 lakes, Cheney Lake, Westchester, and Cuddy, and then a handful of rinks, 1 down at Delaney, 2 down near Sullivan Arena, Kishla Park, Chauncey Muldoon Park, and then the Oval at Cuddy. And we use a contractor for the Cusack rinks and the Cuddy Oval. We're typically maintaining rinks and lakes about 5 to 7 days a week. And then what we need to maintain ice on lakes, essentially, we need about 12 to 16 inches of ice depth to support maintenance vehicles. Once we get to that point, then we get out there and start plowing snow and hot mopping. And then for rinks, we typically need about 3 to 6 inches of ice depth. We build the ice up within the rinks, and then we can start maintaining those. But once it snows, it completely shifts our entire operation, and then we transition over to trails, and then primarily focusing on walkways around schools and areas into parks. But you can see a little bit of our operation. So you can see staff drilling a hole out on a lake early season just to measure ice depth. Our hot mopping, our form of the Zamboni, really is just dragging along a giant 12-foot burlap bag that we have a little drip line of hot water, and we essentially just make rounds around the rinks that way, and it actually does a really good job. And then you can see Chance New Muldoon, the skating ribbon there in the lower corner. We also maintain groom trails here. And our trails, and Joni, I think you can speak to this, but you know, these are really the arteries of our city. So a lot of folks aren't just using our main trails for recreation, but even throughout the whole year, a lot of folks are using those to commute, either to get downtown, midtown, to the UMed district, or wherever you may be working or going to shop or happen to be going in the course of a day. In the winter, we'll get out and groom twice a week. I'd like to bump that up to 3 times a week if possible. But it's just a matter of seeing how we can fit it in the operation. Typically, early season, we'll get out after the leaves drop and we'll sweep the trail in October. And then once the trail's swept, essentially we'll wait until we get some below freezing temperatures and start to get snow. And then we'll start what we call rolling the trail to make a nice compacted base. And once we get about 6 inches of base, which is a little, it takes a while, more than people are waiting, you know, are willing to be patient for, but it takes about 6 inches to get a good solid base, and then we can run the groomer. And at the end of the season, typically early to mid-April, depending what the winter looks like, we'll get out and start plowing the trails. And then after we get all the trails plowed, we'll start running a sweeper through those. And we just had done that in the last 2 weeks, and all the multi-use trails are looking great right now. So here's some pictures of just some of the equipment that we use. Upper left, that's our roller. We'll attach that to a snow machine. And then you can see a groomer below that we tow behind with essentially a device that set tracks. And then you can see in the middle picture, this is us getting out clearing trails. And then we'll typically get something like you'll see on the picture on the right. So plowing and sidewalks, this is pretty much a whole citywide effort, and it's mostly focused around connecting schools and parks. So just looking at that area and focusing in, we'll actually have one full day. One person will take this trackless device out. They'll go down from the North Maintenance Shop, hit up the entire park strip and the connections there, do the bridge over to Government Hill, do the neighborhood and the area particularly the routes leading to the school, and then come back and hit the Ship Creek Trail back into Mountain View and do a couple other walkways and into parks and to the schools that are in that area. And that's typically one full day of work for a person out there on the track list. And then you can see, because this map, there's so much detail, this is sort of all of the maintenance that DOT and MOA and Parks and Rec are doing throughout the course of, you know, maintaining sidewalks. It's a little bit hard to zoom in, but you can see all of the schools that are in this map here are areas in which we're working and maintaining walkways in and around those areas to make sure that kids can get to school, and even getting folks out there and hand digging in some days. So typically when we get a big snow, all of our focus transitions to make sure that we're getting these walkways and helping to support Paul's shop and their efforts that they're doing as well. And then finally, one resource I did want to share is we have this interactive map here. It's our winter recreation in Anchorage. And if you look at the top here, see winter recreation, which is a little bit of everything, our sledding hills, the rinks that we're maintaining, where you can go ice fishing, where the trails are. And then you can, if you scroll down, it will break down into essentially a Nordic ski grooming map that will show you when everything is updated. Then we'll also have a skate link where you can see essentially what ice depth is and when rinks and lakes have been maintained. We also have the trail line work for the mushing trails that are in far north. And then the bottom feature is actually a walk, run, roll, which is an updated map of all of the sidewalks that are maintained in real time. And so this is a great resource for anyone who's wanting to recreate or just get from point A to point B in the winter. And the best way to get to this is go to the Parks and Recreation homepage. And then from the homepage, you'll see a Maps and Apps link. And then you'll see the winter recreation map link at the bottom of the next page, and that will take you here. So feel free to check that out. And in winter, we're updating that daily. And with that, thanks. My contact info is just down at the bottom left there. It's Stephen Rayfuse at anchorageak.gov, and looking forward to some questions later. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, thank you so much. That was awesome. I love that. I love all the graphics, and that's great. And the real-time map is super neat too. I haven't logged on to that yet, but I am definitely going to check that out. Christine, I think Christine also posted in the chat. Is that a link to that real-time map, Christine?
It is.
It is? Okay, yeah, thank you for posting that. Perfect. Okay, great. Well, we are moving right along. We are ahead of schedule, so that's always great. Our next presenter is going to be Transit, I believe, is Bart Rudolph. Are you presenting from Transit?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to turn off my camera here.
Okay. Okay, hi, my name is Bart Rudolph. I am the Planning and Communications Manager for the Public Transportation Department for People Mover. Also on the line, we have Matt Stewart. He's our Capital Projects Manager, and he oversees the site enhancement group that I'm going to talk about. So he'll be able to answer a little more technical questions if they come up. But the main reason that we're here is because every bus rider is a pedestrian or a bicyclist. No matter where they take the bus to at the beginning and end of their trip, they're going to have to get off that bus and walk, ride, or roll to their destination. So we have a vested interest in all forms of snow clearing as far as the roads, making sure that our buses operate safely, efficiently, and as quickly as possible. Pedestrians for sidewalks, anything that Parks and Rec does for trail connections, and bicyclists for bicycle opportunities for people who are biking to and from the bus. The number one winter comment we have, no surprise, is that it's difficult for people to walk to the bus stop. People want to take the bus more. Some people it's their only option, but some people simply just choose not to take the bus during the winter because it is too difficult to walk to the bus stop. This is a picture that I took on Tudor Road of a man standing on a berm trying to get to the bus this last winter. So just to talk about a little bit what we have 674 bus stops. Obviously, this map is hard to see at this scale, but most of our bus stops are north of Tudor. We do have a few routes that travel to South Anchorage on Jewel Lake, Arctic, Old Seward, and Lake Otis, and then one that goes south of Diamond down Old Seward Highway to Huffman Business Park. This is a map showing the 1/4 mile walking distance to our bus routes. Like I said, everyone that takes the bus has to walk there. 1/4 of a mile is pretty much industry standard for transit. What a fair expectation is for people that will be walking to the bus stop. It is growing up to a 1/2 mile, but this is just a visual representation that it's not just the roads along the buses that matter. It's actually the connections within the neighborhoods where people are trying to get to and from. Covers a lot of area in that dark gray. Also here is our bus routes. The routes in red are bus routes that operate every 15 minutes. So those are obviously our most used bus routes. So we would consider that the highest priority for snow clearing. Followed by the purple route, which does have 15-minute service just in the middle of the day. The blue routes have service every 1/2 an hour, and the green routes have service once an hour. And then the yellow goldenish routes in South Anchorage and out to Eagle River just operate during typical commute hours. So we have a site enhancement crew of 4 people, and I think we have 2 vacancies now. Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know Saxton mentioned some vacancy issues too. So we have some vacancies in our site enhancement crew. It's a 4-member team. Fair disclosure, these are not their actual photos. We don't have cartoon men walking around and cleaning our bus stops, but it's the best I could do on this notice. So their jobs for all those 4 people for the 674 bus stops, they have a lot of things that they have to accomplish. In the winter, it's snow clearing. Their primary job all year round is removing trash, both from the trash receptacles and trash just all around, spread around the bus stop or bus shelter. They do minor repairs when vehicles hit like our signs or our shelters. They clean up graffiti, broken glass at some of our stops. They do everyday repairs. If we are installing new benches or removing benches or adding something to the bus stop, they do that work. They also are responsible for the little schedules that are posted at every single bus stop. So when those need to be switched out or sometimes those get stolen, they do all that. So they have a lot of responsibilities to cover those 674 bus stops with 4 people. Some of their limitations during the winter is the trucks that we use. The trucks can only pull or push snow. So what that means is we have no blowers. We can't haul snow out of the way. We can basically just push it somewhere, which leads to the second limitation is where do we push it? You know, obviously we don't want to push it back out onto the street. We want to keep it within the right of way. We don't want to block the sidewalk. Some bus stop locations, it's very difficult to push that snow somewhere. And then the biggest one that we noticed a lot this last year is the ice berms. Once a berm turns to ice, or our trucks just can't move it. So we rely heavily on our partners at the state and the municipality to help us with those berms. But once something turns to ice, it's really outside of our limitations there. So our priorities are obviously to clear the most used stops first. You know, these are our transit centers, our transit hubs, the Diamond Transit Center, Muldoon and DeBar, CN 7th, the museum. The downtown transit center is usually covered by the downtown partnership, but that's obviously a high priority. And then they work to plow out the stops using the trucks to push or pull snow when they can. They actually get out and do some hand shoveling around the shelters if needed. And then they also work to clean off the top of the shelters so that we prevent falling snow from landing on riders. So all this to say, we rely heavily on our partners and we are grateful for the work that they do. They do a great partnership. If we have issues, we usually call one of these and we're able to take care of it. But, you know, we work with the MOA, DOT, the Downtown Partnership, and also our bus stops at UAA. So those are our main partners that we work with. And then in closing, you know, this is what we don't want. This is an editorial from a newspaper from many, many years ago that is just on one of the bulletin boards here in the office. We want to avoid situations like this, so I think this is what we're all working towards. And we're happy to play our part and come up with any kind of solutions that may help us prevent this. So that was short and sweet. I think we'll do questions later, but this is my contact information and Matt, his email address on there as well. And that's all I have.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Bart. Great presentation. I really appreciated the cartoon characters. I should have stuck some in those some of those in mine as well, but I appreciate that. And we are on to our next presenter. I believe we have Kurt from Alaska DOT. Are you on the line? I think we have someone from DOT.
You do have Kurt. Can you hear me?
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you, Kurt. Excellent. I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Joni. I'm not very well prepared. I wasn't sure what to expect at this meeting. I mostly came in to listen and learn and see what we can do to make improvements to our service. As you may know, we have a lot of difficulty with resources, the same as what Paul elaborated to and some of the other speakers with personnel retention. Recruitment right now is being very difficult. We've had our share of equipment problems this last season as well. Nothing in comparison to what Paul mentioned in the city with 30 of his graders, half of them being down. We had similar circumstances where all of our graders were down, but that was only 6 because we are very short staffed. We are short on equipment. And I did get some news from Juneau recently that it looks like our budget is going to go through this year. And they're calling it a flat budget, no increases. So any additional services are going to be a strain and they're going to have to be felt somewhere. We try to prioritize our sidewalks, our pedestrian facilities as much as possible. but our primary goal is to get the roads safe for the traveling public. The majority of the use undoubtedly is traveling public. The 70,000 cars a day on the Glen Highway have to take a priority over the sidewalks. But with that being said, we do try to prioritize the sidewalks as much as possible. We have a dedicated crew of 4 sidewalk blower operators, and we have 4 sidewalk blowers. And on some occasions, they're all actually operating, which is good. So we'll have 2 out every day, 7 days a week. Very inadequate resources to tackle the amount of sidewalk miles we have to do. We do have a priority system, starting with our roads. So priority 1 roads come first, and we put all our personnel on priority 1 roads as soon as it starts to snow, which leaves nobody on the sidewalks, because we utilize our 4 sidewalk blower operators to try to get the roads open as soon as possible. We've tried alternative methods in the past where we put our sidewalk blowers out immediately. The same time we're out plowing the highways, we'll have our priority 1 sidewalks, for example, Tudor, Old Seward, Boniface, being blown, cleared with sidewalk blowers. But as soon as they're done as soon as our plow crews are done on the priority 1 roads, they move to our priority 2 roads and streets, which are Tudor, Boniface, and Old Seward. They immediately bury what we just done. So it makes no sense to have them plowed before the roads are done. So we have to complete our priority 1 roads, which our goal is to have them done within 12 hours of a snowfall. When the snow ends, snowfall stops. Within 12 hours, we intend to have all our priority 1 roads done, and we've been meeting that goal really well this winter. And like I said, then we immediately put our sidewalk crew out on our priority sidewalks, and it takes several days to get through all of them. We don't have that many. The city's been very, very good. M&O and street maintenance and Parks and Rec, they've all pitched in, and they take care of a lot of our state sidewalks that are adjacent to our state roadways. If we didn't have them helping us, we would be even further behind. I understand the public expectation is for better service, and we really want to provide a better service. Without the resources, without the financial resources, the equipment, and the personnel, I just don't see how we're going to get there. I don't know what to tell you, except for that's where I stand. I'm the superintendent of Anchorage Highway Maintenance, Highway and Operations, and sidewalks. They're part of the highway system. We understand that. When I started here as an operator plowing the roads, sidewalks weren't given any consideration at all. They were snow storage areas. We had no designated sidewalk maintenance crew. If we could reach the sidewalk with a blade from a wing on the grader, we would open them up whenever we could, whenever we got the roads completed. It wasn't anything consistent or any formula or reasoning or methods we used. We just, when we could get to it, we got to it. Then in 2009, we got 8 sidewalk blowers and through a federal grant, and we hired operators to run them. 2 years later, we took a 25% budget cut and had to lay off half of those operators. So we were down to four blower operators and had to sell 4 of the pieces of equipment. That's where we stand today. We replaced them last year, so we have 4 new blowers. Unfortunately, due to financial constraints, we weren't able to keep the 4 old blowers. They had to go away to get the new ones. So we ramped up the process and tried to get more involved and to do the best job we can with what we've got. But what we've got's not getting any better. And I just don't see going forward how we're going to be able to accommodate any greater expectations for service than we're already providing. There's adjustments can be made. We can reprioritize our routes with the assistance of your maps, which I find very helpful. A lot of information out there. We just in-house prioritize our sidewalks by what we observe as the busiest, the most used, the heaviest pedestrian traffic. And we're going to continue to do the best we can. And I'm open for suggestions if anybody has any ideas or better methods, means, ways to perform. I'm certainly willing to listen. I know I've got more time, but I don't know what more I can say unless somebody has questions.
Thanks. Thank you, Kurt. No, that was real. Appreciate that update. And I know we all know that you guys are dealing with limited resources, and so we appreciate the frank update. And that's why we're here today, to talk about maybe some things that we could try, or one of our priorities for this winter maintenance map was to figure out what are the areas that if we only had so many resources, where could we potentially just focus in on to make sure that, you know, if we can't do everything, what are the routes that, you know, maybe we could focus in on trying to do sooner so that these folks that are more at risk or in need of cleared pathways would have a better experience. So that's why we're here today. And again, appreciate your update. And yeah, we'll keep moving forward. So I think our next presenter is CB Brady. CB, are you on the line? CB is going to be presenting
Yeah.
from the Alaska Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Great. Thank you,
Thanks,
CB.
Joni. Yeah, thanks everybody. My story is, my name's Stevie Brady, Executive Director, Alaska Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. I'm a blind guy. I look through, my vision is, I still have vision. So for those that don't know, blind doesn't mean you can't see anything. I look through about the size of a quarter or a straw. I use a white cane. I use the bus every day. I bike and I walk a lot. And my story is about sidewalks and bus routes. I do want to say I understand that everybody is constrained financially in your departments. Out of everybody, I want to say Parks and Recs, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because you're killing it. Daily commuting is very hard. It's extremely hard with sidewalks. I live at 15th and N, which is on the way to the lagoon, which gets pretty good service, and Inlet View, which gets pretty good service. But there are many days that I walk in deep snow, days and days after snowstorms on these priority 1 routes. Minnesota, or what is it? L turns to Minnesota. That's state to city or city to state. And I keep track of it just because it frustrates me. And I do want to give kudos to the departments. I think Bart from People Mover and Stephen Parks, you guys, and even Lance, you guys, I know you're doing what you can, but it's not good enough. And I just want to tell you, as a pedestrian, it's horrible. And as a blind pedestrian or a wheelchair user, it's horrible. And most people don't go out in the winter that are disabled. I want to give a couple examples. One of our clients at the center is unable to take Route 30 to an appointment and canceled his appointments all winter and had subsequent problems because he couldn't get to his doctor. A client using a walker didn't take the bus all winter because she was concerned about her desired stops. They'd have too big of snowbanks. She went once and she turned around. A middle-aged man, client took the bus to his destination, then had to order a taxi back because he couldn't navigate from either side of the stop. Those are the problems that I face every day. And I just want, and our clients and our staff face every day. And I just want to be one of those voices versus the 70,000 people that commute on the highway. And I'm sorry, I think it was Kurt, when the DOT, when those graders go up onto the sidewalk and they plow and they have to pull back at a light pole and then they get back on, that's the worst case scenario for a blind or visually impaired user using a cane, because what it does is it drives you into the traffic. Same if you're in a wheelchair, and same if you're elderly. You have to go around that versus step over it. And so while it's appreciative, it's dangerous. The biggest thing I see on sidewalk clearing, which is what I'm talking about specifically, I do not have the ability to drive any longer, is removing the snow from the sidewalks and then plowing the snow into the sidewalks. And I was in construction for 30 years, ran my own company for 20 years. It seems to me it's a scheduling issue, because I don't understand why we would snow blow sidewalks and then plow snow into them. And then it creates this heavy crust that I think, what was Bart that said we can't remove those. So I don't understand why that happens. It seems to me it's not that difficult, but obviously it is, because nobody would do that intentionally, I don't think. The non-motorized plan is fantastic. I think everything about it is fantastic. I am curious why West Hill, might be technically called Romig Hill, isn't one of the connectors to downtown, because it's where I live, and as a daily user, there's hundreds of people every day. So that one is a little head scratcher. Learning about 14 new sidewalk plows in the next 3 years is awesome. Learning about 11 new buses coming in is awesome. Going and traveling to Norway and looking at different cities is awesome, but I don't understand why that money wouldn't be put into just maintenance. I love that we're buying new things. I love that we're improving, but I don't love that we don't maintain what's already there. To me, it's a conflict. I don't want to harsh on anybody, but I don't think we're doing that great as a city. I think we can do way better as a city and state, because it's both of them, I guess. And I would just, for anybody that thinks it's okay, I would say walk with me in the summer to the bus or in the winter to the bus. And it's really not okay. The bus people mover service does an excellent job. There's never any trouble. The drivers are great. The passengers are great. Anchor Rides is also great. We use that every day at the center. But I think we can do better, and I can help identify those areas if anybody cares to know, from a day-to-day standpoint. And maybe many of you also, I don't want to say don't commute daily on public transportation, but we can do a lot better just by planning, not plowing snow into sidewalks. It's such a problem, and it creates such a hard crust that is, a 4-minute walk is 30 minutes, literally. And I can't use my white cane when there's deep snow or plow it into the sidewalks. So I am open to anybody coming and talking to me. Joni's got my email. I think it's on the agenda, and we can do better. You guys are strapped with money. I get it, but we can, just with some planning, do a lot better. Parks and Rec, a lot smaller trail system than 670 some stops, but they kill it. Parks and Rec is killing it. And Bart, as far as the one thing I wanted to mention to you is that maintenance crew that goes out and does such a good job, and they really do a good job. The new route down Wisconsin doesn't have trash cans yet, which that means trash is just thrown on the ground. But I don't understand why we would sweep the gravel from bus stops when the rest of the sidewalks going to are not there. Just as I don't understand why we would shovel bus stops when the sidewalks getting there aren't shoveled or plowed. Maybe, you adopt a bus stop. Maybe you adopt a bus stop with you have to clear 150 feet each way or to each corner or whatnot. And Bart, actually, if we could talk on the side, adopting a bus stop is impossible these days. Nobody gets back to you. So I'm sounding negative, but I'm very positive about our transit system. I just get frustrated when I can't get to the transit system. I think that's all I got.
Thank you, CB. Well, we really appreciate you presenting today, and we really appreciate your unique perspective, because that is exactly the perspective that we all need to hear about. And you certainly are a good example of someone who needs to rely on our sidewalks and our non-motorized network. And so that's super important to us. And so for everyone who doesn't know, CB also serves on our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee as a member there. And so that's AMATS's one of our advisory committees. So again, yeah, super appreciate your perspective. And I know it's hard sometimes to just say it like it is, but that's your experience, and we are better for hearing it. So, and I hope that from today,
Hopefully I was okay.
Hopefully, I hope that from today's forum, we can sort of move forward with maybe some new ideas of how to do things maybe better with the same amount of resources. Or oh, and Jamie also posted that CB also sits on the Transit Advisory Board. So CB, thanks for being so involved in our community, and we appreciate you. So thank you so much.
Appreciate being part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, and we have one more presenter, and then we can open it up to questions and comments. So our last presenter is Marcia Powell, and she is Center for Safe Alaskans. She has been active in working on a safety campaign for AMATs with her team of skilled folks. And so I was just hoping she could present a little bit on some of the good work that her and her team is doing. Marcia, are you on the phone? I know you had a little bit of a scheduling conflict, but hopefully you're on. Marcia? Oh, she might not be on. Well, shoot. Okay, well, we may, let me just double check. She may not be on, huh? Well, we may wait for her to join us. I know she had a little bit of a scheduling conflict, so we will move on into our discussion and comments section. And then if she joins us, great, and she can give her presentation. Let me just go to the chat. And we do have a few comments in the chat. So again, for the folks on the line, this is your opportunity to weigh in. So I can go ahead and read from the chat. Also, if you want to raise your hand and have a comment, please feel free to do that now. But let me read what we've got in the chat so far. So Alan Kemplin, with all the comments from folks regarding limited personal and limited funds for snow removal, are the different groups willing to establish partnerships with citizen volunteer snow fighters to assist with snow removal of sidewalks? Volunteer firefighters have long been used to address episodic demands for fire response. Why not use this model for winter snow events? So that's a suggestion from Alan Kemplin. He also follows that with, why not use the orange snow poles to mark the edge of the rolled curb so that the grader operators know to berm up to it and not past it onto the sidewalk. This avoids creation of the ice berms. So that's more of a technical question. I don't know if anyone from maintenance wants to address that one. And then I'll keep my eyes out for any other comments or folks raising their hand. Want to chime in?
Yes, I think I can address some of the concerns or some of the
Great.
issues and ideas.
Thank you.
It's not a bad idea, volunteer workforce on the sidewalks. In reality, though, that's problematic. We have right-of-way issues. We have a lot of liability issues we'd be concerned about. I think it's worth exploring, though, and see if we can work around those issues and possibly make something like that happen. As far as the orange poles or orange cones on the curb, it's not a matter of knowing where the curb is. We can find the curb fairly easily. What the problem is the snow takes up a lot of capacity. A lot of snow storage space is needed. If you start piling it up on the curb and work your way out into the lane, it won't be long before there's no lane left, or the lane creep, we call it, where the berm creeps out into the lane and cars are colliding on the center line or the dividing line between the lanes. There's no storage area in the roads any more than there's on the sidewalks. The sidewalks give us a little bit longer time to get back to it and pull it away. The busiest sidewalks, we do go in and pull the snow out, blow it into trucks and haul it away several times a year. Not anywhere near as much as the city does. But the city's streets are different than ours. We primarily focus our efforts on high-speed roadways, the highways, and a lot of the big roads around Anchorage. I think the current stats are that the municipality of Anchorage, within the municipality of Anchorage, the street maintenance takes care of 53% of the lane miles of roads, where the state of Alaska, DOT, us, we take care of the other 43% of the roads. A lot of people are surprised to find out all of the main collectors and arterials up on the hillside are all ours. Everything over in West Anchorage, we have a lot of roadways that don't qualify as highways. And when people hear we're doing highway maintenance, they think we're on the Glen Highway or on the Seward Highway. It's just not the case. We have over 1,500 lane miles of roadway in Anchorage to take care of. We split our crew up in the wintertime to 4 different shifts. So we're working 24/7 with 7 operators per shift. In the daytime, we have 2 additional operators come on board to run the sidewalk blowers. So again, I'm going back to resources and I'm repeating myself, but I think we're doing the best we can with what we've got, but I'm open for suggestions, and some of these suggestions are good. And I'd really like to follow up on the volunteer snow fighters. It might be something that would work out really well if some citizens take some responsibility for the problem we're all facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you for that good response. I also am excited about that idea as well, especially in my neighborhood. I feel like there. Oh, here's Marcia. Especially in my neighborhood, I feel like there would be so many people that would love to volunteer to do things like that. Marcia has joined us now, so I am going to let her give her presentation, but we will get to Downey Graham's question, and I know Sarah has her hand up. So we'll let Marcia just give her presentation, and then we'll follow up with all of our remaining questions and comments. Thanks, everyone. And Marcia, you're on the line. Are you, did you want to share your screen or just chat?
I think I'll just chat.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Well, sorry for being late. Life sometimes happens, and here I am. I'll introduce myself for those. I think like I know lots of you, but certainly not all of you. I'm executive director at Center for Safe Alaskans, and our work has been going on for about 23 years, trying to make Alaska safer, Anchorage safer, and for today, I'm going to focus on transportation safety and especially on bike and pedestrian safety. And given that this is Bike to Work Month, seems particularly appropriate. So at first, I'm going to tell you about two different data sources that we use to look at pedestrian safety issues, and then some of the solutions that some of our folks have talked about. And you know, we're primarily talking about maintenance and how to keep the roads and sidewalks safer for folks. So that's where I'm going to end up. So bear with me. The first data source that I look at is we've linked Anchorage police crash reports with the Alaska Trauma Registry, and the Trauma Registry is people who have ended up hospitalized, which means 24 hours in the hospital, so pretty severe injuries. So it's a link between a police crash report and a trauma registry report where somebody's been severely injured, and it's kind of cool linkage because it gives us information about what happens at the site as well as the outcomes like costs of injuries. So some of the things we find out from that is that most pedestrian injuries occur between 4 p.m. and 3 a.m. in Anchorage. 4 to 10 is the worst time, and I granted right now or soon a lot of that won't be dark, but a lot of that is dark actually. Things that we've noticed are that males are predominantly the pedestrians and males are predominantly the drivers, with 64% of the injured pedestrians being male and 64% of the drivers who injure pedestrians as being male. Not a giant overrepresentation, but certainly greater than the population. Another thing to note is where these incidents occur, and this is probably nothing new to most of you. We've divided it up between intersections and mid-block, and I'll give you a little bit more information about why in a minute. But the intersections that are the highest areas for pedestrian injuries are Northern Lights and Boniface, as well as Tudor and Lake Otis, or actually all across Tudor at intersections between Lake Otis and Wright Street. And then downtown, there's a block section between Barrow and Carlick, and 3rd through 6th. Not surprising, but those are places where a pedestrian injury occurs within the intersection. So the other thing to consider is, what about mid-block? And mid-block is obviously not in the intersection, and those high-risk areas are across Muldoon, East Tudor, and downtown. And there's more than that, but these are kind of the highlight hotspots. And I know that Kim Carpenter at Traffic Records have some great heat maps that are available that can build on this, but these are kind of the peak pedestrian locations. So why it's important to distinguish between intersections and mid-block, and this also probably is not surprising, but it's interesting to have the data to support it, that drivers who are at fault mostly happens at the intersection. So this is where the driver was at fault for causing the injury, pedestrian injury. Most of those happen at the intersections. And opposite, where the pedestrian at fault, also not surprising, is mid-block. So this is where basically a pedestrian is crossing, jaywalking. And I'll share some stories about why that's happening in a second. Another thing to note in the data, in the hospital data, they provide where a pedestrian's home address is or whether they had a home address, and also whether they did or didn't. So most of the pedestrian injuries, pedestrians do not have a village residence, which is, I know I've heard a lot of talk about how it's people coming in from the villages, and that doesn't really seem to be the case. It's not so much people with a village residence, but something to consider and be very careful to consider is that 20% of the pedestrians who are injured do not have a home address. So that's something, especially when we're thinking about how to prevent these injuries, something to consider. And this is another kind of interesting piece of data that comes from the hospital data. We can tell that the average cost of a pedestrian injury who ends up in the hospital is $110,000. While a bicyclist is $52,000, which both of those are really high. A lot of that is covered by public money, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, Indian Health Service. So pedestrians are twice as likely, or are likely to have 2 times longer hospital stay with an average of 8 days compared to a pedestrian 4 days. Sorry for the background noise. Hopefully it's not too annoying. So that's some of the linked crash and hospital data. The other thing we do, because I think the numbers are interesting, but they don't tell the whole story. So the next thing that we've done is gone to talk to people who are in that population of becoming injured. And 2 groups that we've met with in the last, well, one group in the last year and another group not as recently. One is with folks who are unhoused and who receive services from the rescue mission, which is on Tutor. And these are folks who are highly represented in the crash data and also very perceptive of what's happening on the streets because they spend a lot of time as pedestrians. They don't have cars and they tend to walk a lot. Another group is the youth at Covenant House who are also unhoused and also spend a lot of time seeing what's happening on the streets. And so some of the things that they've noticed, 2 big important considerations are that to them it seems like everybody is impatient, not just drivers, but pedestrians. Everybody wants to get where they're going and not take the steps they need to do it safely. And also that many people are distracted. So for drivers, impatience looks like drivers who don't stop at an intersection. And for pedestrians, it looks like those who don't want to wait until they get to a crosswalk. They want to get across the street. Not sure how we deal with impatience, but that's a really important perception, I think. A couple other things especially for this meeting that are notable are that jaywalking, so these are the mid-block intersections, and these are the ones where pedestrians are primarily at fault. A couple of things that specifically have to do with road maintenance are that pedestrians want to get where they're going more quickly, and they want to do it in a way they perceive as safely. So they feel like, many noted, they feel like it's safer to run across a plowed street than it is to walk down an icy sidewalk and wait until they get to a crosswalk. One, they don't want to walk all the way to the crosswalk, so that's that impatience thing again. But also, it's much slower, and they feel more dangerous to walk on icy sidewalks than to run across the street. And also noting that a lot of drivers don't actually stop at the crosswalk, so they also feel like it's safer to run across the street. And then, let's see, another thought from them was that it's safer to run across the street than at a crosswalk where drivers, and this is a particular behavior that's predominant. If you're think about being at an intersection and you're driving and you want to turn right, typically we look left to see which cars are coming towards us. But often drivers don't also look right to see who might have the right of way in the intersection. So drivers will look left and then shoot to the right. And if there's a pedestrian or cyclist there, they are not noticed. So these are some pedestrian perceptions, but they also had some good solutions, and there a couple of different categories. One is, how can we engineer or maintain the sidewalks and roads to be safe for pedestrians? And the other is, what are some behaviors that can be implemented or changed to make it safer? And actually, pedestrians and drivers both agree that making eye contact in the intersection is really important. Like, when we're little kids and we teach little kids, look left, look right, look left before they walk across the street, the same should be the same teaching for drivers. Look left, look right, look left. And thanks to AMATS and Transportation and Alaska Highway Safety Office, we're beginning a campaign where the look left, look right, look left is a piece of the information that's being shared, both for pedestrians and drivers, and then to make eye contact at intersections. Another thing we're doing about that, using the data, is creating some radio ads from 4 p.m. to 3 a.m. or mostly from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. about for drivers to look out for pedestrians. And so there's solutions for roads. One is, some of the pedestrians, or many of them actually, suggested not only plow the sidewalks, but what about graveling them or putting sand down or something, so that if the sidewalks were safer, people would be more likely to walk on the sidewalk rather than run across the street. And another second one was to reduce speed on Tudor. And finally, we see lots of signs like moose crossings and children crossing and children at play and slow down for children. But what about some signs that are visible and noticeable in high risk areas for pedestrians, where there are pedestrian crashes and injuries, to let drivers know that they should be a little more alert? So I guess that's about all. That's most what I have to say. But I also want to thank AMATS and Transportation, Municipal Transportation, for, one of the key things for anything happening at dark, whether a person makes a good choice or not, is to make sure they're visible with whatever choice they make. And we've had the opportunity and will continue to distribute reflective tape, reflective gloves, hats that are bright and reflective, bike lights, and lots of other tools for helping make sure that folks in Anchorage are safer as pedestrians and cyclists. So that is what I have to say, Joni. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Marcia. Appreciate you joining us today. And I am going to go ahead and get back to our chat box here. We have a few questions in the queue. Downey Graham, and then Sarah has her hand raised, and then we have a question from Lindsay, or Emily Weiser, and then Lindsay. So just so you all know, that's the order. I'm going to go ahead and read Downey's question. Says he has a big list, or I'm assuming he, but could be a woman. Have a big list of questions. Maybe folks from different departments can answer in the chat or follow up with me. And it's Graham at akpirg.org. Number one, is there publicly available data on feet of sidewalk plus feet of road cleared per hour per day? So that's a question. I don't know the answer for that. So that's something to think about while I'm reading the rest of them off here. The second question is, beyond weather, is staff time or machinery the limiting factor on snow clearing, or something else? Question number three, what additional resources do most people need to be able to consistently clear sidewalks and bike lanes so that fewer pedestrians die? And then the last two, what's the per foot of road cost of winter maintenance, and does that cost vary from road to road? And then finally, are there legal federal state requirements that dictate the current clearing priorities? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on those. He also left his contact information, or if you want to answer in the chat. Is there anyone from maintenance that could address any of those particular questions from Downey?
Hey, this is Lance, Joni. Hold on a second. I'm bringing my camera back up. I'm reading.
Oh, okay, great. Great, thank you.
Yeah. So the first one, a publicly available on feet of sidewalk and roadway cleared per hour. Partially, but not completely. That's a really good question, though. What we do have available is that I think as I forgot one of the presenters mentioned, I think it was Kurt, basically, we have roughly a little more than 1,400 lane miles of road and 200 miles of sidewalks and pathways that we clear. The amount that we clear per hour per day, it really depends on, frankly, the kind of snow. Light, fluffy snow, we can move right through. Wet stuff that's coming down and then it's raining. But, on average, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one to get you that one, because we have a service level performance that we target to have our streets cleared and all of the neighborhoods plowed out. And so that type of, and it's kind of a level of performance we want to get there. But that's a really good question, actually, a really good metric, but it depends on the conditions. The second one, beyond weather, is staff or machining the limiting factor on snow clearing? I'll say yes. Sometimes it can be not only us, we do use contractors in some places, particularly for hauling. It's our policy to haul the downtown CBD after we get, I think, at least 4 inches of snow, and we do that pretty much on a Sunday night. And so I think, yeah, the answer to that one is pretty much, I don't think there's anything else, but Paul or somebody, or maybe the friends over at DOT, they may have a different sense on that one before I jump to the next one. The next one, number 3, additional resources do you need to provide consistency, clear sidewalks and bike lanes? I mean, I think it's just a matter of maybe an understanding, at least maybe on my part. Consistently clear sidewalks, does that mean I'm clearing them while it's snowing or when the snow is done and any amount of snow? Let's just assume if it snows 2 inches, we'll start getting out there and clearing sidewalks. I'm using that as an example. And then consistently clear. I think what I would suggest is, and I would like to know from the group, CB, for example, based on, what is it that a clear sidewalk looks like? Is it pavement or is it a surface that's not slippery? I mean, obviously, just getting it, understanding what a clear is, just clear of snow so that it's, you don't have a strong barrier in front of you. I think that is a really important question, because I made some notes here, Joni, and I'm going to point it out at the end. It's a question for the group, but it's in line with number 3. So additional resources would be those the equipment that we use to maintain the sidewalks. It's strong enough to get through hard, it's not packed ice, but we can move heavy snow with those blowers. And when Paul mentioned the 14 snow blowers, trackless snow blowers, those are replacements. They are not an addition to, because the ones that we have are 20 years old. And one of the questions that CB answered is, how come we can find money to buy new equipment, but we can't have enough money to provide more service? And the reason is it's coming from 2 different accounts. The resources that pay for our operating, both for, and not to speak for the state completely, but usually they have an operating budget they use to pay for operations, and then they have a capital budget, and it comes from 2 different locations, and generally they don't mix. Most of our equipment we buy either through grants or other things. Number 4, what's the per foot cost for winter maintenance, and does it vary from road to road? The cost per foot probably is not very, very much. What matters is how you do it. The way in which we plow snow is on our local streets, we use gates. So we go a lot slower. The state, they're using they're on the Seward and the Glen and some of their other locations. They just manage it differently. They have to go a lot further. They have a much bigger area to cover. So the type of equipment they might use is a little different than ours. And number 5, I don't believe there are any legal or state requirements that dictate clearing. I don't think they do that for roads or for trails or anything. There is a level of expectation that things will get maintained if you use federal dollars to build them, whether they be a trail, a road, a bridge, or anything like that. So I think I touched on most of those, but the first one here I got to wrap up on. And I'll let Paul and a lot of the other smart ones jump in and see if I missed any big ones.
Thanks, Lance.
Yes, this is Paul. I'd add to a couple of the questions here. I need to scroll back down here and find them. Number 2, beyond weather, is staff time, machinery. Our budget has been left whole. Employee time, staff time, working them overtime, that has not been the issue. It's just we've got a limited number of people. We have a limited number of machines. This year we experienced the breakdowns, the ice, no excuse given, but they're simply right now, we need to locate corridors that get people to and from where they need to be and reduce the amount. Right now, we basically are trying to clear both sides of every arterial and collector in town, and we simply don't have the money and resources to do that. Again, my staff will be available to work with people on identifying different priorities. But right now, hopefully these 14 new pieces of equipment, as we get them, they will be more efficient and allow us to do things a little bit quicker. But it takes us currently 48 hours to get through one round of sidewalks and trails that we maintain. And that's just blowing through them. That's clearing. Lance brought up a good point about what is considered clear. If we try to clear the sidewalks down to the pavement or to the concrete, we would be breaking equipment, we'd be breaking people. There's just too many obstacles to do that. So currently we leave about a half inch, the heads of the blowers about a half inch off the ground, and do our best to provide a surface that people can navigate. And then when the ice hits in the springtime, there's simply nothing that we have found to try and get through the ice, to try and remove the ice. So unfortunately, until something better comes along, that's just part of what's left when we maintain these. And then the biggest factor for us is we have to do trails that have snow storage because there's simply not enough right of way to do that. There was a question here about you see snow stored in the existing on-street bike trails and right against sidewalks. In those areas, we have no other choice because there is no right of way to store snow beyond those facilities. Again, we are open for suggestions, willing to discuss things with people, but the expectations of what we can do have to be realistic if we're going to improve our services.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate those responses from Paul and Lance. I'm going to go ahead and move down to our next person. I know Donovan's got his hand raised. Sarah had her hand raised, but I don't see it raised anymore. So I'm just going to move on.
I just didn't want to have it up that whole time.
Okay, great. Sarah, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Sarah Prescott, and I'm involved in many things throughout town, both PTAB and the Spenard Community Council. And I want to echo what CB said, where like the sidewalks are not navigable in the winter, and it is because there aren't enough resources. But I'm having trouble really gathering what it would take to have functioning sidewalks maintained throughout the winter. We hear a lot about what we don't have, but what would it take to have plowed sidewalks within 24 hours, to give an example? And I don't think we have the answer off the top of our heads here today in this meeting. I think it's something that each agency needs to come together and determine what that looks like. But I don't know that the public could give as give suggestions that are as effective without understanding what it is that the agencies really need. So if there's a way to put together something comprehensive that's sort of an ask of the public, like how can we advocate for more funding for these agencies so you can get the resources you need so people can be out on the sidewalk safely and out in the bike lanes safely? Is there a way that the powers that be could come together and come up with something like that? And yeah, it's sort of utopian, but you have to have something to aim for. I guess that's my question for a near future project. Can we come up with something that is, this is what it would take to have all the sidewalks plowed in 24 hours so all pedestrians of all abilities can use them?
I think that's a great question, Sarah. And of course, let maintenance folks answer if they want to chime in. I feel like that's kind of where we are trying to get towards with this prioritized map, and realizing that we don't have the resources to do everything, but at least starting, is there a way we can get to prioritizing these certain routes within the first 24 hours? And then maybe eventually, I mean, if it ever is possible, to expand to all the sidewalks. But for now, it would really be nice if we could at least improve those core networks that we had found. So I think that's a really excellent question, and we're certainly happy to move forward, looking at that. But I'll let the maintenance folks chime in if they want to, or if they can.
This is Saxon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I mean, in project management, they reference this as a cost for quality, a cost of quality, and defining like the level of service that, we're gonna, that we would expect. And as we kind of define this, we could explore this as a project and get a price for this put together. I know when I came on too, that was part of what I wanted to understand from street maintenance. When I came on, Paul helped educate me along with Lance. They explain, these are the resources we have. This is our performance measures, and the performance measures and objectives define how we'll be graded and assessed. And so we closely watch that throughout the year. And one thing we're doing to maintain, satisfactory performance measures is to get away from the just-in-time delivery with fleet maintenance and the mechanic shop. We only have so many mechanics and so many parts. And just-in-time delivery, we found, is having a tough time with the broken supply chain. So when we have failures with equipment, right, we want to support Paul's crew at street maintenance. We want to get that equipment back out on the road for those operators, because that's where everybody sees the benefit of those services, and it does not help to handicap Paul's crew with downed equipment. So we are moving back to an older model of kind of storaging and warehousing parts that are commonly used, and that will help keep the equipment operational and on the roads. But as far as getting the price together, that's very doable, and we can put a price together for that, and we can show a picture of what that looks like with labor, with operators and equipment to see what that looks like. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to be a part of that estimate effort.
Awesome. Thank you, Saxton.
Yep.
Great. I want to keep us moving here so that everyone can get their questions answered. Looks like Emily Weiser, you were next, and then Lindsay, and then Donovan's got his hand raised. Emily, I know you're on. Do you want to just talk about your question, or do you want me to read it out?
I don't have much to say. It was more of a comment,
Okay.
other than what I put in the chat, just to make sure that if we go to a volunteer snow fighter model, that we keep in mind that some neighborhoods won't have volunteers, so that's where we need to allocate the public resources.
Gotcha. Okay. Excellent. Good point. Thank you, Emily. And we'll move on to Lindsay. I know, Lindsay, you're on. Do you want to talk about your points here that you got in the chat?
Lindsay just had to sign off.
What? Oh, she just signed off? Oh, shoot. Okay, dang it. Well, let me read. I will read her comments in the chat, and then we can, if anyone wants to answer those, maybe we can do those at after that. Okay, so Lindsay's comments were, it sounds like there are different criteria on how roads and sidewalks and paths are prioritized for each department. Could the data that Joni presented provide a shared approach on criteria used for prioritization across departments? So that's one question. Also, snow storage on the sidewalks and bicycle lanes still seems to be a policy for the city until or if it can be removed to a snow dump. Would this practice not occur on the priority corridors so that these facilities could be used? So that's your second question. And then finally, also as a comment, as we work to promote denser housing along transit corridors or even ADUs in established neighborhoods, community members point to additional car traffic in the winter when snow berms constrain roadways as a concern. This has more to do with street maintenance than zoning or codes. Doing more to prioritize roadways for winter maintenance could help address these challenges while still working to develop more housing. So those are Lindsay's 3 comments. I do appreciate her first 2. I think, yes, that was part of our attempt today, was to try and to coordinate a little bit more through all of our departments and figure out how we can I know we're working smart, but maybe if there's a way we can work smarter with the resources we have, that's certainly something that we wanted to do. And I feel like our data driven approach to the non-motorized plan should help us potentially do that if it's possible. So we'd love to shoot for that. I don't know that I can answer the snow storage question. If anyone else wanted to jump in. It's about snow storage on sidewalks and bicycle lanes. Is that a policy for the city? Could this not be a policy on a priority corridor? I don't know if that's even possible. So
This is Paul. Unfortunately, we are constrained by right-of-way on most of these newer roads that have been built over the last, say, 15 years that have the on-street bicycle lanes and pedestrian facilities on both sides. There is about usually a foot of snow storage beyond the sidewalks or trails. In some cases, there's none. Our current snow hauling budget is 1.2 million. 15 years ago, it was substantially larger than that. There simply is no snow storage. It snows, we plow it, we remove it as soon as possible. Truck costs went up almost 20% this year. Fuel is going up. So reality is it's going to take a lot more money to get better service. But even then, there's time restraints also. We're working 24/7 in the winter. I think we hauled snow probably 40 days and nights in a row this winter. So unfortunately, Anchorage in the past wasn't laid out to promote pedestrian corridors and things like that. And as we continue to grow and develop these areas, we will have to develop maintenance practices also. But again, this is going to take a while, and we are also going to need to look at road designs to keep and incorporate snow storage. This is Anchorage, Alaska. There is snow. There's snow on the ground 6 to 7 months, and all users and all maintenance people are going to have to find a way to coexist to make it better. Currently, right now, when we're trying to promote pedestrian facilities, bicycle facilities on both sides of the road, it's going to be very difficult to provide a better service, even with more resources and more money, because there's simply only so many hours in the day and so many trucks and blowers to haul the snow away. So we will continue to strive to improve our services, but it's going to be a long road to keep up with the desires of the community to get these things cleared faster and better. Thank you.
thanks, Paul. Thank you. Great answer. And we will going to move on now to Donovan. Donovan, you had your hand raised for a while. Do you have a comment, question?
Yeah, actually, some of those last comments really segue into my kind of comment and question. I'm representing Bike Anchorage today and no other organization. But something I've kind of heard throughout this meeting is that two things is one, that we're pretty low on funding in order to maintain our facilities. The other is that we're mainly prioritizing roadways. And so I just kind of would like to comment that, personal vehicle travel is one of the most costly forms of travel. And that prioritization often helps induce demand. And so as we shift prioritization, we can shift demand, and non-motorized transportation is a viable form of transportation that we could move towards as a city, and in the long goal, shift away from that very expensive budget. One thing that we've heard as we make that shift from maintenance is that some of the newer forms of active transportation styles, such as protected bike lanes, are often maybe not able to be designed due partly from comments from maintenance, and that they would be something that they would not be able to maintain. And we see this as somewhat short-sighted because those would actually help the budget overall as we shift. Another thing is pedestrian crosswalk islands. We have seen those installed, but from what I've seen, that they're not getting maintained in the winter. So these crosswalk islands are large snow berms in the winter on Spinard in particular, I could speak to, and Raspberry. So if there's, I'd like maybe someone to comment on the possibility of maintaining those newer facility types in order to help shift our mode.
Thank you, Donovan. Excellent, wearing your Bike Anchorage hat. Great comments. And we do have some follow-up comments as well. So I'm wondering if I should read through these, or it looks like some of the comments were answered in the chat. I might just say that for anyone that's still on that wants to, I want to leave just a few minutes for kind of next steps and closing. But is there anyone that wants to chime in with their question, or didn't feel that they had their question answered in the chat? Feel free. Now is your opportunity.
Hey, Joni, it's CB.
Hey, CB.
I'd just like to follow up what is clear on a sidewalk as a blind guy with a cane. If that was a 1/2 inch or 2 inch, whatever that blower was, that's totally adequate. Absolutely, the requirement is not to be down to asphalt or pavement. We don't have to feel the tactile warning strips at each corner. It's just getting it plowed. And the same would go, thinking the thought process would go to a wheelchair user. How much snow can you plow through? Or my 76-year-old mom. There are times when it's snowing too much and you just say, well, I'm not going out today, but that shouldn't be every day. So when I say, or when I heard what is a clear sidewalk, to me, it's a navigable sidewalk. I would even, for me, able-bodied guy, I just can't see, I'd say 6-8 inches, but for a wheelchair user, it's much less. So I hope that helps clarify that. And then just to follow up, who just commented, and I didn't catch your name, I'm sorry, but I agree, we're talking about a non-motorized plan and the priority is motorized. It seems a little conflicted. And then I just wanted to tell Lance, I do recognize it's two different departments, that maintenance and new construction. I totally understand. However, when we report to the assembly, maybe we consider including maintenance into new construction, because just like we improve roadways and we add, beautiful medians with flowers and plants and stuff that are never maintained, that should be built in as well. And I don't mean that critical to Public Works or anybody. I just mean maybe there's a different way to add maintenance into these plans. Thank you.
Thanks, CB. Yes, and to Donovan's comment too about prioritizing vehicles over non-motorized users. I think that historically that is something that has been done, and we are trying to move away from that. We are shifting towards multimodal, priorities. We have some issues measuring, level of service for non-motorized users. We can measure it for vehicles, but as far as AMATs and our federal goals and guidelines and performance measures, we are moving towards a multimodal level of service and trying to make that more of an equal playing field. We do recognize that that in the past, yes, it has been very vehicle focused. And so I think that's just a trend that's happening globally and in this country for sure. And looks like Deborah's got her hand raised. I'll let her chime in.
Hi, I'm Dev. I'm here with Bike Anchorage, and I would like to know how the maintenance department and all the planning or designing teams work together with new projects, because there seems to be a problem with not having enough right of way for storing snow, but it doesn't seem to be a problem with buying right of way when highways need to be expanded or car lanes need to be built. So how are they working together? Are they not working together? Why is maintenance not being prioritized or thought about when new projects are being built or designed? Is this something that's happening or not?
That is a really great question, Deb. Thank you for that. And yes, we are really actively trying to integrate maintenance more into our planning efforts to estimate not only cost of maintenance, but also who would be responsible for maintaining new facilities. So that is something that's gone into our recent transportation improvement program criteria, the TIP criteria. So when we're selecting projects, we are thinking of it. We have a complete streets policy that was adopted several years ago that is also on that track. And it is difficult to do. It's especially difficult to do because as AMATs, we get federal funds to do planning and construction. None of those federal funds can be used for maintenance. So for actual staffing of maintenance, we can buy vehicles for maintaining facilities, which is what has been put in the TIP this time around. So that's a first for AMATs. And then Fairbanks also did that as well. But it's tricky for us because yes, we need to plan for that maintenance, but then the dollar amount to go along with those facilities is not always, we get the funds for planning construction, we don't get the funds for maintenance. So those have to come from somewhere else. So, but yes, it is integrated into the right of way. I know that traffic is always keeping an eye on that. I don't know if any project managers or engineers want to speak to that more than I'm not an engineer or designer myself. Looks like Saxon has his hand raised. So if anyone else wants to chime in on that, feel free.
Yes, I'll add that as a project manager for transit last year, I felt like a lot of our concerns were addressed in new projects. I mean, first they came into Bart Rudolph, and then they come over to capital projects where I was at. And it was reassuring that there was, I felt like an effective overlap with new projects as it pertained to each relevant department. We all had a say in new projects, and I felt like our voices were heard. So that for maintenance and or any concerns and meeting, at then our goals to satisfy the riders and represent the riders of People Mover. And I thought that was effective. And I got to see the comments from all the other departments that came in and once they were consolidated on the project list. So now that I'm over at capital projects and the whole maintenance and operations umbrella, I see that we're also incorporating new projects. So obviously my position as it relates to Paul and as a whole public works, it's great to see that the continuity is there. So I feel our voices are heard and I feel it's effective. And obviously we advocate for our departments, how we're going to be able to maintain those assets and meet expectations. And we convey those in a narrative on new projects and deliver them to the relevant project managers. So I'd say, yes, there is continuity. It seems to be effective. Thanks.
Thank you, Saxon. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Or I'm going to go ahead and move to one of our last comments here. We're good. Okay. So yeah, last comment, and then I'm just going to speak a few minutes on hopefully some next steps so that we can move forward after this forum to make some headway in all of this. But Alan Kemplin's comment and Sarah Prescott, Sarah's question is just how should she respond to the question that sidewalk and snow removal is the responsibility of maintenance and operations. When she gets asked that in public meetings about road designs. And I think maybe our response to that previous question may answer that a little bit. It's not only the responsibility of maintenance and operations, it's our job as planners and engineers and designers to try to integrate that in prior to the development of a facility. So hopefully that answers that. And then lastly, this is the last comment from Alan. And then I'm going to move on to some next steps. But Alan's comment is, seems like it may make sense to establish pedestrian bike corridors separate from vehicular traffic corridors. Snow removal could then be addressed differently with different approaches based on dominant travel speed. As density continues to increase in the Anchorage Bowl, pedestrian bike travel volumes will continue to increase. A separate system of pedestrian and bike streets with more innovative approaches to snow management may warrant further consideration. I think that's an excellent idea. I don't know how the M&O folks feel about it, but it does seem like that might be something we could move toward is separating those in terms of their resources and approaches. But then unless anyone has further comments on that, I'm just going to follow up with some closing comments here. I just want to thank everyone for attending today. It's a very well attended event. I think we have had over 30 folks at one time at the meeting. So really appreciate everyone chiming in. I feel like we had a really good broad overview from all the different departments on what your current challenges are and some opportunities. Paul's got his hand up. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, just before you close, Jody, I wanted to let you know I'll get with my staff and with Lance and Saxton, and we'll go through those last couple of questions, and I'll provide some responses to those, and I'll get them to you so you can get them out to folks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been really great. It's been really great hearing from all of the different departments, and I really feel like, you know, we can move forward with some approaches to maybe focusing in on some of these corridors, but we can schedule a follow-up meeting with some agencies individually or have a group chat again. So AMATS will take the lead on doing a follow-up conversation in the next few weeks to maybe just chat about if there's anything out of the forum that we feel like we can do a little differently or try a new approach. That'll be super helpful. And then we'll keep you all in the loop as we move forward on that. Does anyone have any other comments? Oh, thanks, Saxton. Thank you for the invite. It's our pleasure. We appreciate your participation. And does anyone have any other comments before we sign off here? No? Okay, great. Well, I really appreciated everyone again. Thank you so much. And it was a real pleasure. I hope you all get out and enjoy some sunshine and enjoy the rest of your day. All righty.
Thanks, Joni.
Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, nice job, Joni. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Joni.
Bye.